The Grade 1 Whitney up at Saratoga on Saturday. Here was the field of 8. Everything looked beautiful all day. Sun was shining, a little bit on the hot side, but what do you expect? It's upstate New York at the beginning of August. And then, as can be the case in upstate New York in the middle of August or the beginning of August, the dark clouds quickly rolled in just before post time, scheduled anyway, for the Whitney. And we got that deluge that Saratoga is most known for. And this meeting specifically just seems like it's been very, very wet. But this race, it ended up being an absolute sort of washout as far as the weather was concerned. So we had a little delay, but ultimately they went out there on the track. And you had 3 horses. You had Diversify, Mind Your Biscuits, and Backyard Heaven. They all made sense given a number of different circumstances and situations. But you could also make little cases against them. And if you chose to go that direction, then the question became who else could beat them or who would you try to beat them with? Really, what it boiled down to was a futile exercise because there was one horse in particular. The top 2 ran very well, but one horse in particular that just put on an absolute show. And he clearly didn't have a problem. With the sloppy going up at the spot on Saturday afternoon, Larry Colmus with the sloppy stretch run of this year's Whitney.
Diversify in front. Mind Your Biscuits, his fellow New York bred, is 3 lengths behind. Taprit is 3rd on the inside. Discreet Lover is 4th. A furlong to run. In this wet Whitney, it is Diversify. Oh, and he's got a 5-length lead here. Mind Your Biscuits and Discreet Lover will battle for second. Diversify has won the Whitney in style. He took it by 4 over Mind Your Biscuits. Discreet Lover was 3rd and Taprit was 4th in a final time of 1 minute.
Diversify gets the job done as your 8-5 post-time favorite over Mind Your Biscuits, who was the runner-up at odds of 3-1, and the third-place finisher, Discreet Lover, one of my favorites, outruns his odds time and time again, does so again on Saturday, odds of 38-1. He rounds out your trifecta. Let's take a look at the winner a little bit more in depth. Diversify is 10 of 15 lifetime, 12 times in the exacta, just shy of $2 million in career earnings, owned by Ralph M. Evans and Lauren Evans, trained by Rick Violet Jr., bred by Fred W. Hertrick III and John D. Fielding in the state of New York, ridden to victory by Arad Ortiz Jr. in the pedigree that is at the bottom of the horse card if you're watching. He's by Bellamy Road out of a street cry mare named Rule 1. Now, as far as speed figures are concerned, 110 buyer, 132 time form US rating for Diversify winning the Whitney. Keep in mind, have some sympathy for the figure makers for a race like this because the track was totally thrown out the window at that point. Once you got that crazy rain that came through, there was really no parallel to be drawn from the rest of the day, and there were no other races run after. There would have been 2 turf races anyway, but they were canceled because how much rain had fallen. So this figure, I think it's accurate, and I think it's good, and time will tell if it stands up, but this is a nightmare for a figure maker because the track had been one thing all day, and then all of a sudden it's throw it up in the air. Timeform US had 3 of the splits, the internal splits, all color-coded red, meaning the pace was fast. And I tell you what, this was a visually impressive effort from Diversify, and on the clock it was an impressive effort as well. The one thing that I will also throw out there, though, from the Timeform US side of things, they had the main track at Saratoga color-coded as slightly or light blue, meaning it may have been slightly favoring horses coming from off the pace. Now, again, I throw that out there because that doesn't necessarily equate to what this race was like because the track had changed so significantly. So perhaps for the majority of the day, that's actually what it was playing toward, or playing a little bit more favoring one side than the other. But for this race individually, I just would strongly urge caution using that for a barometer for this effort, simply because the track was just so different than what it was for the rest of the day. Regardless, neither here nor there. When you look and see the way that Diversify ran in here, he is very, very dangerous considering he can go fast and he can go a route of ground and be able to see out at least 9 furlongs, and we've seen him actually do it at 10 furlongs in the Jockey Club Gold Cup last year. The interesting thing here for me with Diversify, the way that he goes out there and just bottoms out a field, that's a tactic to me. If I have a speed horse, that's how I want my horse ridden. Break like a shot, go right to the top. Arad takes no prisoners. Says, we're doing this thing. We're going right to the front, 23-1, 46-2, 10-3 for 3/4. And he rode this horse, to me, This is as good a ride as you're going to see. And it may sound silly because he didn't have to make any decisions about where to put the horse or do X, Y, and Z. The reason I say this is as good a ride as you're going to see is because it reminded me so much of the Fort Larned ride that Brian Hernandez gave in the Breeders' Cup Classic a number of years ago, where going into the far turn, you got to try to let him out a notch, to try to extend, get everybody off, and try to get them all of a sudden saying, well, we got to go and catch him. We got to catch him. Use your speed to your advantage. It's never, ever, ever, ever a good idea to have a horse, a speed horse specifically, where that is your greatest weapon, to let everyone else be right there with you and bring them all into the race. Irad did the total opposite. He said, you got to come and catch me. I'm going to open up, get everybody else off the bridle, and you saw what happened. Diversify just continued on down the lane. The speed figures, they're off the charts. They're tremendous. He's paired up 110 buyers. Rick Violet says, you know what? No matter how good he looks coming out of this race, the Woodward ain't happening. Probably go to the Jockey Club Gold Cup and then probably on to the Breeders' Cup Classic. May sound a little bit funny saying probably the Breeders' Cup Classic, but Violet brought it up that last year at Churchill, he ran in the Clark and he was terrible. And Irad had said he just never got over the surface. Now, you can look at that one of two ways. Let's say he goes out into the Jockey Club and struts his stuff and puts on a show. You'd say, how can you not run him in the Classic, considering you might be the speed of the speed and you might just be the horse, the now horse. You are in the best form. You continue to put up giant speed figures. How could you not run in the Classic? Well, if you don't think the horse can handle the racing surface, do you want to just go out there and sort of fire a dud? I just have a hard time imagining them not going there, but at the same time, I kind of respect the idea that if they say, he can't handle the racetrack, why are we going to go if we can't do it? There are other opportunities and other options, and that is well down the road. We still have a ways to go. But at the end of the day, right now, you've got to look at a horse like Diversify in a division like this and say he is one of the favorites. Now, I had done a seminar earlier in the day with Peter Thomas Fornatal and Mike Watchmaker on Saturday up at Saratoga, and I said, I don't think the Classic winner's coming out of this race. And as much as I love Diversify, and as fast as he's been and as good as the form has continued to be, I still don't really view him as a Classic sort of horse, mainly because of the distance, not because of the talent. You saw him hop back to his left lead at the end of this race. He hopped back to his left lead at the end of the Jockey Club. This is just something that Diversify does. He hopped back to his left lead at the end of the Suburban, which, again, 10 furlongs, so he can do it, but I don't think that's his best distance. Now, if you want to make the argument that he just bottoms fields out and no one has the opportunity to make up the ground at the end, that's one thing. But you combine 10 furlongs with potentially a racing surface, and I'm just looking at Churchill and the Classic as hopefully what the end game is for this horse. If we get there and he's in raging form, the fact that he didn't really love the racing surface and the connections are a little bit concerned about it, and it's going to be at 10 furlongs. The good thing for a horse like Diversify in a year like this is because it would be a year like this, where maybe this is a little bit of a suspect group that's going to be going down there. But I don't love the idea of him at 10 furlongs because you've got to assume someone else is going to go and try to push the pace as well. And this is not meant to take anything away from this horse. I think he's one of the let's say, 3 to 5 best horses in training right now. I just do wonder about his prospects as a favorite in a race like the Classic, should he get there in good order, which, again, we've got to wait and see. Time will tell. One thing is certain, though. Right now, he's probably boss of the older horses on the East Coast. On the West Coast, there's an argument where you can say it's Accelerate, or you can say it's the lightly raced Catalina Cruiser, or any of these other horses. Perhaps a 3-year-old somehow puts forth, comes up with a big effort, whether it's the Travers or one of these other races. But Diversify is boss of the East Coast right now. Mind Your Biscuits. I thought this was a very good effort from Mind Your Biscuits. First time going 2 turns, and almost in his 30th lifetime start. He's done this thing once or twice. I thought on the far turn, he made that nice brush, made a good move, and he just sort of flattened out down the lane. And I'm not going to hold that against him. He earned a 104 buyer here and a 125 time form US rating. I do wonder if there's a scenario where if it's a wet racing surface, or a dry surface, rather, maybe the margin of victory is narrowed a little bit. But at the same time, Do I really see a scenario? The only scenario I could see Biscuits turning the table on Diversify is if someone pushes Diversify early on and really goes at it, because there is a difference between just going out there and running the way Diversify did, running fast, but you're uncontested, and then running fast and being pressured throughout. If there's someone else that can go with him, then perhaps that's when Biscuits can come with a little bit more of a run. I'm not sold on him at 10 furlongs. I think he can go a distance like this, mile and an eighth. Clearly, he looked good doing this. I know Chad Summers had brought up a few different possibilities as far as what the next start would be for Mind Your Biscuits. I think this at least proves, anyway, that you're going to have a horse that can go 9 furlongs. Now, can he go 10? We'll find out if you're thinking classic. To me, I think he is best still going one turn, but that doesn't mean that he is incapable of going these sort of longer distances. All things considered, I think the connections have to be very happy with the way this horse ran. He acquitted himself very nicely on Saturday afternoon. As for the rest of the field, Discreet Lover, love him. Don't think he's a classic type. Don't think he's really grade 1 caliber, but he can continue to cash checks. No reason. Taprit, he was the one closest to the pace that finished, I suppose, the best, but he was still beaten by a country mile, and let's just call a spade a spade. He's just not really grade 1 quality at this point in his career. He's just not. Good Samaritan, I want him back on the turf. I've been saying it for a long, long time. I want him on the turf. I think he's a better turf horse than a dirt horse. McCracken, I want him turned back to a shorter distance, hopefully 7/8 of a mile. I'd love to see him run in the Forego. I believe that's on Travers Day, coming up in a few weeks. Backyard Heaven. Man, I don't know what you do now. I know he was close to the pace. Maybe he hated a wet racing surface. This is all on the heels, though, of that disaster down at Churchill. And I think you need to start looking a little bit deeper. And this is something that, as an exercise, as a handicapper, everyone should do. We get so enamored looking at the numbers. And you say, wow, he's got 105s, 106s. He shipped out of town. He did this. He did that. He's had physical issues. He popped back to his left lead at the end of that Ali Sheba. That Ali Sheba has not come back strong. So then he goes down to Churchill and he bombs. And you can say, oh, well, it was the humidity and it was this, that, and the other thing. Okay, maybe it was. Confident move for Chad to bring him right back into a spot like this. Goes out there close to a hot pace, packs it in badly. You got an excuse there. Wet racing surface. Got a bit of an excuse there. If you really want to go through and say that if you want to make the case that he is a little bit dirtied on paper, it's your prerogative. I would just caution and say, or he's going the wrong way, or he's already gone the wrong way. I'm leaning toward this horse might need a breather. Just my opinion. This is 2 consecutive bombs. I have a hard time just saying that both of them were because of the circumstances. You're not supposed to be beating a country mile in both of them. If you're going to fold, look, you're better than Taprit. You're more talented than Taprit. At least finished relatively close to him. Taprit blew your doors off. To me, this is an instance where you got to think long and hard wherever Backyard Heaven shows up. And again, knock on wood, hope everything is fine. I think he probably needs a little bit of a breather. I think he's probably better going 1 turn than he is going 2. I personally would love to see him in a race like the Cigar Mile. Make that his goal. We know he can handle Aqueduct. We know 1 turn is his game. I would like to see him there, but it'll be interesting to see what we get from the connections and where they choose to go with Backyard Heaven. At the end of the day, the Whitney was a show. Whether it was because of the wet weather that just came rolling through and delayed everything about 45 minutes, or because of the smashing effort delivered by Diversify. He is a strong New York bred. The New York breds run 1-2 in this prestigious Grade 1 race. Diversify looks like you got to consider him on the short list of contenders for a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. A 110 Beyer speed figure, a 132 time Form US rating, and it sounds like the Jockey Club Gold Cup will be next on his list. He'll look to defend that title at Belmont Park in October.